Good morning, lovely. ZoëTwoDots here with some more kind of Pokemon Go goodness for you. Today is the USA versus Australia kind of like review and comparison video. So a lot of you have been curious as to my kind of like reflection and review of, I suppose, USA and how the USA compared to Australia. I think especially because I did mention a lot I had a bit of culture shock, surprisingly actually, going to the USA. So I'm going to get into that video today and explain kind of like the differences and similarities that I experienced in the USA. So first up, yeah, I honestly didn't expect to experience culture shock going to, like, I suppose, another English-speaking country, another multicultural English-speaking country. Like, you wouldn't think from the outset that the USA and Australia are that like different. I know that we have very, very different, you know, cultural influences and just like social influences and things like that. But on the surface, you know, they appear similar. But I genuinely have less culture shock going to Japan than I did going to the USA. So part of that is just because I suppose the day-to-day life just seems so incredibly different comparing the USA to Australia. Just lots of little nuanced things that are different. I'll start off with just some like small little bits and pieces. Tipping is not a thing in Australia at all. Full stop. Like, there might be a little tip jar at a cafe, and that's it. Like, if you see a tip jar, you might just chuck your change in there because you don't want to carry around the heavy coins. Tipping is not expected. It is not really the done thing in Australia because our servers, our restaurant staff, all of that get paid like an adequate wage. Like, they get paid correctly, essentially. So tipping is not really a big thing here. So I landed and I realized that I had forgot to like Google. I was like, oh my God, what is the tipping culture? What is like the percentage amount for Chicago? Like, is it different? Because it varies state to state. How do I tip? And so started a few long conversations with people, and awkwardly with staff as well, being like, hi, how much do I tip you? I really don't know and I don't want to be an asshole, essentially. Having conversations with other, like you guys, like other YouTubers in the States, asking them how much to tip, what's like reasonable, when do you tip? Do you like add it when you pay? Do you pay after? Do you just like leave it on the table? Like, how does that go? So that was like a whole wild experience. I just didn't want to like offend anyone or do the wrong thing or not basically pay someone their wage. So tipping was different and a new experience for me. I think I might have not over tipped, but been generous with my tips, just because the food in the USA was a lot cheaper than in Australia as well, definitely. I mean, depending where we went to eat, but generally it was about $5 to $7 cheaper than in Australia. So I was like, this is cheap. I'm just gonna round up to the nearest, you know, add the 20% kind of tip thing, and just round it up and leave that there, because I was like, I'm already saving money on the meal anyway, so enjoy a fat tip. So yeah, tipping was weird, new experience. You know, I know how to do it now at least. Another just small thing was crossing the street. In Australia, when you go to a crossing, like a intersection with lights, pretty much you can like stand there and look at your phone for, you know, do whatever you want and just chill, because when it's time to cross, the crossing light actually plays like a little noise, like a that, you know, so you can hear it, so that blind people can hear when it's time to cross the road, all that kind of jazz. Like, the actual pole where the light hangs off vibrates itself, like you can hear the like noise physically as well. So it's kind of like a physical sensation for people that can't hear or like see the green man when it's time to cross the road. So that, I found myself standing, waiting to cross the road, like, you know, not being on my phone because I wanted to be aware. Looking across the road, all of a sudden there are people walking at me, and I'm like, oh, it's time to go, because there's absolutely silent in Chicago. There's no noise that goes off. Just the little red man goes to the slightly whitish green man. Doesn't really stand out that much. So I think me and Tonton had the same thing. We're so used to having the noise. Him living in New Zealand for a few years, it's the same as in Australia with the noise, and also in Japan with the whip whoop, whip whoop, every time it's time to cross the road. So even crossing the road was a bit weird. I kept like genuinely realizing, I'm like, oh no, I gotta go across the road. People are coming towards me, let's go. The grocery centers, like your shopping centers, I don't know what you guys call them. I went into two Jewel Oscos, and that was different. They were so, like, the amount of product and merchandise, like the amount of variety that you guys have is insane. Like, the chips aisle was like double-sided, like chips all the way down. I think you guys call them crisps, whatever you want to call them, like Doritos and Smith's chips and all that. Two full like aisles of it, and so much cheese dip. What do you need with that much cheese dip? Oh my goodness. But it was just insane. Like, compared to Australia, we have like, if it's, you know, a full aisle, it's one side and maybe only like 3/4 of the way is chip. So I was just like, there is too many options. I'm overwhelmed. I'm just gonna pick some plain Doritos. And the amount of cheese dip was on every single aisle. I don't know if there was some sort of promotion going on, but every single end aisle had like cheese dip as like the display product. And I was like, is there something special happening with cheese dip this week? Because that's a lot of cheese dip. I also noticed that the like fresh food section was about half the size, I would say, of like a Coles or Woolworths. Our Coles is different to your Coles. It's Coles with a C. Coles or Woolworths in Australia has probably double the size for like fresh produce, fresh veggies and fruit. Whereas the dual Oscos that I went into, the first one had like a pretty decent fruit kind of section, but I would say easily half the size of what it is in Australia. Also cheap. Holy moly, pretty much everything was like cheaper in terms of buying fruit, veggies, snacks, crazy cheap. Alcohol is ridiculously cheap in your country. I was out with a couple of guys and we were looking for just like grabbing a couple of drinks, maybe get a bottle of vodka, just looking at the prices. And one of the guys commented like, oh, we could get that one. Oh, but it's like 30 bucks. That's like crazy expensive. And I was like, what? $30 is probably the cheapest bottle you could find in Australia for vodka. So I was just like, holy moly, what do you mean you can get this for like $10 or $15? That's dangerous. So that alone, insanely cheap. Comparing the food, food probably portions are maybe a tiny bit bigger than Australia, but pretty similar for like going out to like pub kind of meals. Like they were pretty much the same size. My favorite meal was a burger that I had out when we went for dinner with J. Kim, Hybrid Mongoose, Kyla, Hawk Frost. We went out and just had like some burgers and barbecue stuff. That burger was seasoned for the gods. It was phenomenally tasty. Just like all of the flavors worked really, really well. So sometimes it's hard to get a good burger in Australia. Like you need to go to the specific places where it's like, this place does the burger. Whereas the 2 or 3 burgers I had in the States, like they weren't burger specialty places, but they still tasted phenomenal. And asking how you wanted your burger cooked as well. I don't think I've experienced that in Australia, like medium, well done, rare, whatever. Normally it's just like, here's your burger. It's cooked through probably medium done. So like actually having the option to have medium rare in a burger was so good. The least favorite thing that I ordered was I ordered like just a pasta, veggie pasta with marinara sauce, which marinara, is it marinara? No. With the, what's the one that's, it's just like literally it's the tomato base, like it's the bolognese base. Like when you're making a bolognese, it's like tomato and basil and garlic. And like that's the name for it. It's on the screen now because I can't remember for the life of me. I ordered one of those because I was like, cool. I've had so much dairy like all this week. I've been feeling a bit sick. I just want to order something with like no dairy in it. Get this like plain pasta, veggies, tomato base sauce. It arrived and it was literally cheese sauce. It was like bechamel cheese sauce and pasta and veggies. I like that. I don't know if it's just like a, maybe they got something wrong in the kitchen or if you just don't call it that in the States, but I'm like, that's just the tomato sauce. Why is that a cheese sauce that it's arrived as? But it was room service, so like I wasn't interested in sending it back and waiting like forever to get food again. So I just downed a whole bunch of like lactase tablets and ate away. It was still tasty, but I really just was not in the mood for it. I did also try a Chicago hot dog. It wasn't like one of the big like crazy ones. It was like kind of like a snack size one, but it had like the chilies and like the gherkins and stuff on it, and that was really, really tasty as well. That was stupidly tasty. Coffee was good. Coffee was slightly confusing because they kept asking me if I wanted sweetener. And I was like, what the hell, sweetener? Because I was ordering iced coffees. So in Australia, usually if it's like a hot coffee, they'll ask if you want sugars or you'll put your own sugar in when you're done. We don't really call it like sweetener. If you wanted something like Splenda, you would say like, can I have it with Splenda or blah, fake sweetener. So that was different, but I mean, not too dissimilar. Transport. The trains were really, really good in Chicago. I got the train from the airport to my like first hotel. Pretty smooth, pretty easy to use. Like the ticket system was fairly easy to use. Got one of like the reloadable cards and like kept using that for a couple of trips as well. The lines were pretty easy to follow, pretty clear. The trains themselves are fairly old, but I mean, Australian trains are pretty old as well. We don't have the greatest transport system in Australia, public transport, so different style, like layout. The seating configuration seemed a bit like clunky or different, but I mean, comparatively, it's like comparing Australian public transport to Chicago, both old trains, both get the job done. I used Uber and Lyft while I was in the States. Uber was kind of crappy in the States compared to Australia. I think we might have different requirements for our Uber drivers and things like that in Australia. And I used Lyft on the recommendation from Pokemon Master Holly. I used Lyft for the first time and then continued to use it for the whole time I was in the States, because Lyft was amazing. So much cheaper, super friendly drivers, super safe drivers, loved it. Thank you very much, Lyft. Not sponsored, but definitely if you're an Aussie going to the States, use Lyft instead of Uber. We only have Uber in Australia, but if you're going to the States, Lyft was so much better. Next up is the weather. So the weather for the weekend that Go Fest was happening was like I think abnormally hot and humid. Everyone was saying like, oh my God, this week's been insane. Comparing it to Australia or comparing it to Newcastle, it was way more humid. We sometimes have humid, like a couple of humid days in a row, but we mostly have, I would say, a dry heat. Because Newcastle's a coastal town, we have a really beautiful like coastal breeze that's, you know, you could have a 40 degrees Celsius day, but you're still getting a nice bit of breeze that just brings it down a couple of degrees. So Chicago was about 32 degrees or 30 degrees Celsius, but with the humidity, it definitely felt like a 35 degrees. For me personally, I was fine. Like I was definitely sweating with the plastic backpack. That felt disgusting, but my first day for Go Fest, I just took like a little sling bag, which was perfect. Just walked around like it was comfortable enough. The rain was a bit annoying, but in terms of like heat to heat comparison, it was fine for me personally. The humidity I probably struggled with a bit more just because I don't deal with humidity day to day, and I probably compared the humidity similar to, it felt like wetter than like Singapore humidity. Like Singapore humidity is pretty thick humidity as well, but something about like the weather in Chicago just felt like I could feel, maybe it was the sunscreen as well, just feel the air on your skin a little bit more. And comparing it to like Japan humidity as well, I think Japan's probably less thick. Even though they have very humid weather, I find it's a more subtle humidity. But that being said, I've only been in Japan once for summer and Singapore once in end of summer, so So yeah, I mean, one day I'm going to travel to North Australia and experience that kind of humidity, because that's 40 degrees Celsius plus humidity. And I'm sure that's going to be a whole new ball game to compare it to, so who knows. Someone also asked me to compare the beaches. I was only in Chicago, and it's not really a beach, like coastal state. They certainly have like the Lake Michigan and everything, and there was beaches on the lake kind of thing. But definitely comparing to Australia, like the entire east coast of Australia is beaches and beaches and cliffs and beaches. You can surf your entire way up and down the east coast, like every single beach in Australia pretty much. You can catch waves, you can surf, and have a good time. Amazing sand quality in Australia. I only saw the one beach really near the planetarium. It was very, very calm, like no waves, fresh water, and like a little pocket of sand. So still looked nice, still looked clean, but definitely not like a surfy beach. I think I need to go to a different spot in the USA to compare those. Next up is friendliness. So someone asked me to compare the friendliness between people in the USA to people in Australia. And it really have to break it down by certain factors, I suppose. Everyone at Go Fest, specifically everyone at Go Fest, phenomenally friendly. Strangers, people that knew me, people that didn't know me, super duper friendly. Like I had conversations with people who, you know, didn't know I was a YouTuber, but for one example, this little kid started talking to me about his shinies. It was at the end of the event on Sunday, so we were all like walking out of the park and walked and talked with them for like 15 minutes just about Pokemon, and super lovely people. Of course, all the people that knew me as well, being like, hey Zoe, like everyone was super warm and friendly at Go Fest, definitely. Outside of that, I suppose, like, you know, in restaurants and things like that, the servers, the staff, all super lovely that I experienced. And a lot of people, I suppose, in downtown, I think you guys call it like the downtown area, kind of just like, you know, keep to themselves, do their own thing, but, you know, no one that was aggressive or angry or things like that. I didn't really have the need to kind of stop or ask strangers for anything though, so I didn't have a lot of like stranger interaction in that way. I did notice a lot of people like kind of just keep their head down and go. Certainly on the days where I was by myself walking around and filming, people mostly were just keeping to themselves, keeping in their own little like bubble, which was different for me because I'm certainly someone who like, I just look at strangers and I do smile at strangers. Like I don't have an issue with that. I will just like give someone a little smile and keep walking about my day. And I'll kind of loop back to this in a little second. Whereas most people just kind of seem to be like on their little mission, which maybe is a bit similar if you want to compare it to Sydney. Sydney is very like go, 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 very business, very like I have somewhere to be. So Sydney, you're kind of like on a mission, especially like in the CBD area. You're not stopping to like smile and wave and kind of help people around. But certainly if you got stuck and you asked someone for help in Sydney, probably, you know, 70% of the people would be able to help you, or not in a rush, like too much of a rush that they couldn't stop to help you. Especially if you're around like touristy areas like Sydney Harbour or things like that, people, you know, happy enough to help, pretty easy going in Australia. So lastly, I wanted to touch on the cat calling thing. It's come up a couple of times and I just wanted to kind of like put the whole story into context and get it out of the way. So to preface this whole thing, of course, I do not like judge an entire country based off like half an hour's worth of bad experiences with, you know, 10 different people. I can't use 10 crappy people as a baseline for an entire country. Like, that's not cool. I'm not ignorant. I know that this is separate to every single individual in the States, of course. And as I said, every single person that I met at Go Fest that entire week, these negative experiences did not take away from that. It was just probably a very weird and unfortunate way to start a trip or a holiday. So when I first got into Chicago, I went to my hotel, put my like bags away, all that kind of thing, and I needed to go get a SIM card because I still didn't have a USA SIM card because you don't have them in the airport for some reason. What's up with that? I had pre-Googled like a destination, like a 15-minute walk south to this T-Mobile store to get a SIM card, and I was like, cool, I know where I have to go. It's like 1 block there and then 3 blocks down. And about 4 or 5 minutes into that walk, the catcalling started. I had people pulling up their car like next to me, like driving alongside me, yelling out the window. I had just strangers on the street like yelling or talking very loudly, saying very inappropriate things, very condescending things about me, to me. I kind of just kept walking. I hadn't slept that much. I'd like just gotten off the plane, essentially. Been awake for almost 24 hours with minimal sleep in between. Just like in desperate need of a shower and a SIM card, and frustrated, incredibly frustrated. So I was kind of like, I don't want to start any drama. I just want to keep walking, keep my head down and just go, because I don't know how to handle these situations in the States. This isn't something that happens in Australia, or if I react in the way that I would in Australia, what's going to happen here? So kept walking for the 15-minute walk. On that walk to this, like the T-Mobile store, I was harassed, yelled at, pulled up on, beeped at by, I think it was 5 people, 5 different individuals. Someone actually exited their business to like yell something at me. I'm like, this is bizarre and I don't like this at all. Got to where the SIM card shop should be and it was closed down. So I was like, yay, I walked all the way down here to not even get a SIM card. So incredibly frustrated, walked back to the hotel. On the walk back, someone actually like took a photo of me walking past as well. I was like approaching this guy, looked up, smiled, because that's my nature is just to like smile at strangers. And I was like, thank goodness, this guy is just smiling back. He's just a regular human being. And then as I walked past, whispered something super derogatory, and I heard him like boop, boop, start videoing me as I walked past, and I was like, great, awesome. This is terrible, I hate this. On the way back, I think I had about 3 encounters with people. So made it back to the hotel, looked up a new SIM card place, and there was one like literally across the road. So I was so frustrated that there was one like right across the road. Got my SIM card, got it all sorted out. I posted about this experience on Twitter as well. I did follow up and say, you know, of course I don't take this one, like these experiences as my view on the whole country, but a lot of people were saying, well, doesn't this happen in Australia? Like, well, yeah, of course it happens everywhere. The majority of people were very supportive and very much like, you know, sorry this happened to you and thank you guys for that. But a lot of people saying, well, yeah, doesn't this happen everywhere? And the answer is no, like genuinely no. It's not okay and it's not normal. In Australia, like, yes, you might get like beep beep beeped at, or someone might, you know, out the window go, oh, hey darling. That's pretty much it. And maybe like once a month, like once in a blue moon. It's really not massive here. And if someone does do that, you can kind of go like, I don't want to have to censor this, but you can pretty much just say off. And they'll, you know, go about their business or whatever. I don't know what the reaction would have been if I had said that to someone in the States. If I had just, you know, given one of these and told them to go on their merry way, how that would have blown over, I don't know what the response would have been. I don't know if it would have been aggressive or just, you know, oh, whatever, you know, blow it off. So in comparison, no, it doesn't happen in Australia to that extent for the people who are asking. It's still not cool, obviously, to beep at anyone or to, like, you know, yell at a stranger. Definitely not cool in any country, but certainly that was the thing that I noticed as like a massive difference between USA and Australia. And again, not letting those negatives stuff up what was genuinely such a phenomenally good trip. I had such an amazing time, and I'm not gonna let 10 idiots ruin it for me. 10 stupid, ignorant people aren't gonna ruin this trip for me. Because even though I had encounters with those 10 stupid people, I also had encounters with hundreds of phenomenally beautiful, kind-spirited, genuine, warm people. And those are the people that matter. Those people that care and talk and handshake and get a photo together and trade some Pokemon with and just, you know, talk and eat food together. Those are the people that matter. So I'm certainly not letting that ruin my experience. But yes, I just wanted to cover it because it's been asked about separately in different streams and in different videos. I just wanted to just done, finished with it. We're good now, we Gucci. But yes, that is my comparison of, I suppose, the top things on my, like, that I can think of that were obviously different, that were just kind of chalk and cheese, depending, like, from USA to Australia. So if you have any more questions, if you want to know in more detail any of these topics, or if you want to ask specific questions, let me know in the comments. I'll answer as many questions as I can if you have really specific, you know, what does cheese taste like in Australia compared to whatever? Oh, we don't have cheese dip in Australia. We don't have like the Tostito. We don't have that. So yeah, that's wild. But if you want to know specific stuff, ask me in the questions. I'll answer as many comments as I can and get back to you as soon as I can. But all in all, guys, I had a fantastic time in the USA. I'll definitely be back in the future. I've got a whole bunch more fun videos coming out this week for you guys, talking about a whole host of new topics. Gen 4 maybe is big this week, who knows? That's been rumored. There's been some leaks. We're gonna investigate that, but otherwise, guys, I hope you have a fantastic, fantastic morning, noon, night, whatever time it is for you, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Bye.